Republicans, due to their naval advantage, have more cards still coming. Even though this is the start of a new deck, they get an extra card. Actually brings one thing up, another one of the places where I think the rules kind of fail. They say there's a specific step. Here in the upkeep phase where you implement these. That's not possible. Most of these are ongoing effects. So, you know, like extra replacement point. Well, I guess you could mark that ahead of time. Of course, then you might just forget about it. If you count and don't look at that necessarily and just reset it. Because I had a 1 sitting there which was probably for that very purpose or something. But maybe not, I don't know. Playing a card or drawing a less of a card, that comes at the beginning of the turn. These things don't, you know, they don't take effect at the point where it says implement them, and there's nothing to track them except the boxes themselves. So I don't know. Anyway, the Nationalists are also down a card because of the naval situation, and it looks to me like it's time to move some boats around. As far as I can tell, no safe place for boats. Well, maybe your naval base. Because there's no rules for attacking something in a naval base. So I could kind of store that there with the thought of, well, at least I won't get picked on. It's actually one of the problems that I'm facing right now is there's a fair-sized Republican Navy. Now, it may start going away. There are no rules for this to come out of here and go back to the naval base. Oh, wait, this got repaired by a fucking card, I bet. It did not. It got repaired by a repair point. That was cheating. I gotta turn these guys upside down so that I remember not to do that. And that'll allow me to slap another one of these down, which is no big deal. Nothing exciting has happened that would prevent it, except I don't know which spaces I had filled. But I can guarantee you I did not have this space filled, and that's a pretty good place for me to have an extra force. And again, I'm taking militia because what the hell? This card. Yeah, so I did not want to build that. So actually the naval situation is much more even. It's 2 cruisers and a destroyer versus a cruiser, but it's a lot more even than throwing that battleship into play. Which as long as these were just like this, it looks like I can fix them no matter what. They should, I don't know what. I really don't know what. I don't know a way because it doesn't register with me that this is not available anymore. Okay. Nationalists contesting every single area possible, but focusing on attacks in Barcelona and Seville, because if they get those in addition to Madrid, they get the win. So again, you know, pushing it so that the Republicans have to respond. One kind of iffy thing I did was oh no, I committed 2 planes here. I was thinking about throwing more into the med because the med's important, but wherever I throw my planes, they're probably going to get counteracted by those better Soviet planes. So that's just an issue that I gotta face. And that'll put it on to the Republican position. The situation of fighting over maybe only a few spaces is very impressive to the Republicans because they have less generals, so consolidating in a few spaces is easier. The problem, of course, is so many of their pieces are tied down that they can't evacuate an area that's shared at all. Oh, I forgot to put my planes down. So they have to leave a lot of crap on the board that they can't afford to as much as maybe the Nationalists can. And they're ending up with smaller stacks in all 3 of the key places. So if all 3 of those fall, it is over this time. And I have to think about, you know, how that affects where I'm going to put my planes. Even so, the Nationalists feel like they don't have enough commanders. They have You know, they have one in each of the major places. Both sides have those there. The Nationalists are going to try to play it out, force the Republicans to fire those off first, make a decision whether or not they're going to have a counterattack, which they probably don't want to do anymore, ever. But then they had a couple of places left that they were able to put into where they think they have slight advantages, whatever. They would have also liked to launch one here, but, you know, they're actually outnumbered there and might lose their tank if they launched an attack there. So maybe it's best that they didn't, you know. Seeing with the combat system is it's resulting in the kind of siege, static nature that some of the warfare did degenerate down to. You have the capability to punch through things and a lot of mobile capacity because there's no, you know, there's nothing like a solid front line, but you do have strong points that are being hard to reduce. So for example here, you know, I had maybe a slight advantage, but it doesn't get me a win. It just wears the enemy down a little bit. And then he can extricate himself in the next turn, you know, at least partially. Nationalists had high hopes that didn't pan out. A couple of off spaces, they didn't really gain much. A little bit of attrition, and then attritions that kind of went against them throughout the key spaces that they were hoping to maybe win it. Which means the larger card hand is going to have an effect. I think that drops us down to the naval, which is not going to be pleasant for them. That's going to be 2 dice at +1 against 1 die. There's no guarantees. Oh, we'll just roll this out. No planes, nothing exciting. Okay, so we each knock each other damaged back to port. It doesn't really matter. And this is one of the big boys. It can't go here. Could go there. I guess I'll keep throwing them in there. Yeah. 5s are damages, right? I can't remember. There really needs to be better play air aid cards with games where dice results mean things. Instead of a CRT that gives you the results. Okay, so it is not damaged. A 5 is withdrawn to the base, so these both were not actually damaged. I don't know. I really don't know where it goes. This one's fine, but here a 5 is withdrawn to a friendly naval base, leaving the naval operations area. Well, I'm not sure if I can withdraw to this base that I don't control. My feeling is that it really just goes to a port like it would if it's damaged, except that it's available still. And that means the Republicans hold on to all the sea areas. And now we get to the mechanical crap. From the track, the Nationalists have lost one of their areas, but the Republicans have no areas left whatsoever. All they'll be pulling off of is the contested areas in terms of replacement points. Some of the cards, it matters whether you own something or not, and not owning anything is kind of a bad sign. It means you've been covered. But I think that's kind of the way this game is intended to work, is that the Republicans just get... There's going to be more nationalist forces, and the Republicans are going to get all their spaces covered so that they do not own any at the end of the game. Now, the victory conditions at the end of turn 10 is they just have to be inside 3 objective cities. So they're well within that, you know. They're in 7. So they're going to have to take a much, much bigger hammering than they're taking right now if the Nationalists are going to get a win before the war breaks out. Interesting in terms of the card play, because cards are beginning to not be playable to a large extent. For example, this one. This tank no longer exists in the sense that it's on the board already, and it hasn't been killed, so I can't bring it back into play. So this becomes a play only really for the combat effect. And this one, well, I could play this and get extra replacements, but maybe I need that next turn, so I'll hold on to it. So I was only able to get some extra troops, destroy a Republican plane, and remove a unit from Madrid, all of which seemed like good choices. Being more careful with the cards because I don't want to scramble them again. And then for the Republicans, well, they had a plane they couldn't get. They haven't seen any Italian units. I know there are none, so they're not going to be able to remove any of those. They don't own Barcelona, so they've got like 3 cards in reserve. However, they were able to get a bunch of extra troops, which is a big deal. It actually feels like they've made a surge in troops to the extent that they may be able to turn the tide a bit going into a replacement turn, which is fantastic. There is no replacement. Both players discard down to 8 cards. Yeah, that's not going to happen, so we're done. And we push forward. So that mistake at Madrid a little while back, that's becoming more and more of a big deal. Just the, hey, should it have ended on turn 4? No, I had the wrong victory. I had the victory conditions wrong. That's becoming a serious problem now, because the Republicans were able to lay down a fair amount of troops, and they're getting more draws because one of the costs of that was this naval dominance that the Republicans have achieved. And it's going to become harder and harder to cope with, if we don't have the cards, because right now we're clearly outmatched, and unless we get, maybe there's another naval card that can help us here, but unless we get lucky or something like that, luck plays a fair amount in this game. I mean, in the sense that you could get exceedingly lucky. Any game that use kind of buckets of dice type systems, you can get very, very lucky, conceivably. Probably luckier than you can with most CRT-based games. However, it's way down on the bell curve, It's almost impossible for your luck to be, at one of the extremes that looks like it's possible. And it may happen on one die roll, but it probably won't happen across. And to tell you the truth, I find that bell curves, with their chance of a huge, a hugely, obscenely rare occurrence, tend to cluster so close to the middle, especially when you're dealing with a lot of dice at once, that it's actually less, you tend to see a more stable distribution over most of the events than you do off a CRT. A CRT is much more likely, with its, especially the kind of flat, traditional CRT, it's much more likely to give you that, oh look, I rolled a 6, just what I needed or didn't need, Here, you might miss by 1 or something like that, and that feels just as cursed, but in general, the more dice you throw, the more chance, the more likely it's going to fall into kind of an expected range. Anyway, drew the cards. Republicans only got, or Nationalists only got 2. Republicans got their 4. Remember, the extra draw for the naval ends when you switch decks. So, and there's enough Republicans on the board, I don't know if I can weed them all out. Situation, Republican Navy goes up here on the chance that, or sorry, the Nationalist Navy goes there, on the chance that the Republicans all, they feel like Republicans, they're rightists, right? On the chance that the Republicans end up trying to keep control of the Mediterranean and allow them to get an extra card. But no, the Republicans are too interested in wiping out the votes. But at least we give them an opportunity cost for getting as much advantage as they can. For the Nationalists, what have we done? Well, a heavy concentration in Madrid. Why? Because it's one of the 3 areas we need to win. I probably actually have too much there. Let me shift one of these. This could have made it down to Seville. Just to get a little bit more balance. And Seville and Barcelona. The reasoning being, hey, we could still, you know, come up all aces and win the 3 battles. Elsewhere, well, we've got certain limits. We can't go everywhere. Like, we couldn't go here. Shit. Crap. This can't escape, so I could leave somebody in Burgos. Okay. Yeah, because... I don't know what I did now. Okay. Oh, I pulled somebody out to Burgos who couldn't leave from here. Yeah. Tried to cheat. And it's hard because, you know, this is not normal, a normal movement type system. It takes a while to get used to what's going on. And now we'll go down to the Republicans' countermeasures for this. All the planes, where did they all go? They all went to Barcelona, which probably means the Republicans with their better Soviet planes want to go in and fight against the Axis planes over there, shoot them down, make sure they don't get it. And Barcelona is the most important to me. But what we want to do is make sure we don't lose all 3 of them, and we may want to expand to the extent that we are kind of unable to be dug out of our position. And the Republicans grab Cadiz. Hey, it's one of the 2 naval bases. They can still slip up to El Farol and repair there, so it's not as good as it could look. A little bit of expansion up here, just trying to, you know, get towards the areas. There's 2 things we can do. We can challenge some of these. That gets us dug in better. And we're getting closer to Madrid and or Seville so that we can express some power down there. Unfortunately, I don't know if we got a tank left here? No, we got an extra plane there. That plane's got a +1. We may have too much air power here, but the truth is we can kind of wipe out the rest of the nationalist air power if we go in there. I could have committed one somewhere else. Other places like Madrid and Seville looks more likely that we're going to lose. Actually, everything looks a little scary to me. And I think we're out of tanks. If we make it through this turn, we got a whole bunch more shit that we can pull in. Which should be kind of cool, but we got to survive the turn. Okay, I guess it's time to start dropping generals. The 3 big battles, which the Republicans may not want to actually launch attacks in, but there aren't really a lot of places they want to launch attacks that are loose. Toledo might have been one. They're covering to try to give whatever bonus they can give to hurting stuff in battles they kind of know are going to be triggered by the nationalists. But the nationalists launch a couple more battles in locations where they have a slight edge, you know. Try to fight the attrition war where it is. And then they get to trigger off the first attack. And they, of course, are going to try to force the Republicans, which they can do easily, to make a decision whether they're attacking in one of the key zones or not. First round of combat, the Republicans seem to have stymied the nationalists by playing a -2 dice on their big. They had a 3-point unit attack, and they got some good hits on it too. So it looks like Madrid is going to be really tough to kill. I've got basically 2 dice to try to get 5 hits. Well, that's not going to happen. I could add 2 more dice, but it's not worth it. Reinforcements are probably worth more at this point. So I erred, you know. I got stuck behind the 8 ball there, and I'm not even sure, except like, hey, attacking with a tank seems like a good idea. So, you know, I got +2. He's got 2 dice though. Republicans a little worried that the Nationalists wouldn't attack in Barcelona. Actually launched an attack there to make sure their +2 leader got an attack, to make sure they got the air superiority advantage that they have. They came out of it with only one plane. No, sorry. With 2 planes. I forgot to use one. Well, I don't think it would have. Yeah, it might have had an effect. Okay, and or I might have saved it. I don't know. But anyway, the Nationalists are not going to attack there. They're going to, because they're actually outnumbered at this point, so they're going to launch their final attack in Seville. It was the only attack that could really be considered successful. Well, we almost wiped them out. We did 1 die against 1 die. We spent a card to improve our chances on our first attack. It was kind of weird to keep going because this is sitting down there, but we get to move first. We could tie it down at Cadiz and keep Seville, and, you know, without even a unit possibly. It's hard to tell because there might be a chain going down here. In fact, there is. Those you got to keep an eye out for those. Now we go to the naval, which probably is a Republican victory. Okay, so the Nationalists brought some extra troops into play up here at Larida. Special rule for that on the card, and they grabbed 3 more replacement points. That's going to put them up to 15 total, because they have 12 to begin with. The Republicans, though, have 8, which is going to be kind of impressive. And they get an extra one. The naval battle actually failed. The Republicans brought in some air and armor, which can only be played at a friendly port. Their only friendly port is here. And let's see what else. Some of their cards they couldn't play, but they were able to bring additional forces into play. I don't know where. Notably, they have some good cards like this that have no effect. There are no Italians on the board, so I can't withdraw them. So that's kind of impressive. Now I guess we spend those replacement points. The position of the replacements is a little different than before. I can now reinforce up to 3 strength point units. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of them, but I had some militia, which is really cool because it turns into 5-point regular army. But I also upgraded units to 3-point units to clear out, get some 2-point units so that I can get 2-point builds off these. Remember, only 1 per space, so of course the cards don't affect that. So in some places I was able to get advantages because of the cards. But, you know, trying to position myself so that I can upgrade somebody like this to a 5-point regular. If you flip him over, he turns into that. Remember, that was bothering me before? Yeah, it works perfectly now because there are no 5-point militia. And then we'll get I spent everybody. We'll get to the Republican side. They have 8. I'm not quite sure how theirs are going to work out. A couple of 3-point units they could upgrade. A little bit less. I think the Nationalists had 3 or 4 maybe. And are more interested in actually getting more pieces so that they can spread out and be in more places. Although they do have to worry about holding on to one of those 3 key cities. And how we discard down to 8 cards. Yeah. Again, I think that's just a safety valve there to prevent the game from people from hoarding cards too much. I haven't felt the desire to hoard cards, though. I think if you hoard cards, you'll end up losing an automatic victory to your opponent. Okay, so I start this new turn here with draw of cards. And one thing that I was thinking is the cards are they're a part of the randomness. You're going to get most of your cards, but some cards are much better than others. Some you lose the ability to affect. And then for me, there's an added bit of randomness, which is I can't really absorb all these and plan for them in my turn. I mean, I could, but I'm just finding it impossible to focus on that in the solo play. Again, it's this kind of thing that I find is the real difference between solo and opposed play. In solo play, I can't concentrate as much on trying to win. Although, I gotta tell you, I'm not that much better in opposed play. But there's a little bit of an advantage. But I know some people really, really focus, and here what you have is two people who are blundering idiots, a little worse than I usually am. Anyway, after that, navies stayed where they were. Once the nationalists chose not to move theirs, the Republicans, faced with the choice of try to wipe out the last nationalist navy or get the Mediterranean advantage. I started moving the forces. I have no nationalist planes, seriously. Yeah, I think all the nationalist planes, they were wiped out, and I think I didn't get any new ones. I only got a tank. I focused again on Barcelona, Madrid, and Seville. The Republicans probably have enough force that they can push their way into these, So, for example, we're going to probably swap the big unit from Toledo there. Somebody's going to come up from Cadiz. Shit like that is going to happen. And I'm finding that the nationalists, other than a little bit of extra force over here that they could swing to Barcelona, had a lot of trouble pulling extra units out. So, for example, there's a 5-point unit here in Burgos. I don't have an easy way out of Burgos. So, like, I could swap it into some place weaker, but I don't want to give up Burgos. So that unit's kind of stuck there until, I don't know, if it can swap with this at some point, that would help, presuming everything stays the same. But right now, that's a big unit that doesn't look like it's doing much except scaring the shit out of the Republicans that are near it. Now I'll do the Republican movement. I gotta be careful. I gotta watch here because my day is going to start right off with a phone call. So I can't chance going over. What's happened is we've reached a certain level of parity where the forces are close enough that neither side can move anything very easily. And you can see the Republicans playing the same game the nationalists are, because those locations are just too important to let. They each have some force in them and force that could only easily get to them. So each one is being contested because the force that's in them I would have to withdraw and lose something. And I could have done that certainly in Madrid, but then what if I happen to lose the other two? So I'm kind of contesting on all of them. Remember, I can't really paw through the stacks is the way I'm doing it. The only real extension that I see from the Republicans was here. Try to grab La Coruna and add yet another city that I'm gonna, have a contested state for the next replacement phase. None of that really matters, except that the more little cities that I'm in, now that could not have made it, that was here, that could not have made it to Madrid, but it could have made it to Salamanca or Segovia, either of which, puts it in a position where if it spawns an extra unit that can drop into Madrid. But as it stands over here, now I'm threatening another space. And the nationalists are going to have to extend their own forces out to there, or else they will lose it next turn. So yeah, and that puts us to declaring basically where we're going to fight with the generals. And the Republicans have an extra general finally, but he only works with Basques. And there aren't a lot of places where I want to actually attack with the Basques. So he's going to be going here, but it's not, well, yeah, but it's not time for that yet. It's actually first a nationalist one gets placed. But the real question is, do the Republicans need their generals to help defend those and maybe get a counterattack off or something? Or are there other places that they might want to commit them? And I don't see any point anywhere else, to tell you the truth. I don't have a numerical advantage in many places. Like here I have one, but it's only slight. It's really not the kind of thing I want to commit any. I want to commit a bonus still. So I'd rather be in the main cities. Kind of know where the Republicans went. The only question is where their +2 went. I threw them in Madrid. I feel like it's the weakest of my places, the most likely to be able to use that. Lister, the -1, could only go there to have his effect. And there's no point in putting him in one of the key cities unless he's going to have his bonus effect. He doesn't have a communist piece anywhere else that unless I made a mistake. For the nationalists, the 3+1 leaders in the key locations, however, found a couple of places where I have decent advantages on small forces because the Republicans are still a little weaker, kind of, trying to squeeze every little last drop into the key locations, where I think I can get an attritional advantage. But, if I cause a hit to one of those, that's a 1-point hit. If they get lucky and hit that, that's a 2-point hit. And it's just, it's one of the things that you put a big good unit in there, and you have a chance of it taking more significant damage than every smaller unit. But those 5-point units, I got a bonus out of building them, so I get a bonus. The opponent gets a bonus if he hits them too. It works out both ways. At least I get a lot of dice on my attack, and I'm probably going to clear that unit out of there. Which, given that the Med wasn't, and the Cantabrancy, neither of those were owned by the Republicans last time, they didn't really get much in the way of a card draw bonus. In fact, they didn't get anything. What did I do? I feel like I drew an extra card for them. Did I? I don't know. I feel like I did. You only got 3 there, I'm pretty sure, but I feel like I pulled the 4th card here. All those little things that modify, it's hard for me to keep track of them all. I don't know. I'll leave it as it is. I may have cheated in favor of the Republicans again. I'm not really pro-Republican. Well, I don't know. Not really pro-nationalist either, but they're at least bluish purple, which I like better. Well, I thought I had finished the turn yesterday, but I come up and no, I haven't. I didn't have enough time before I went dancing, and I've been kind of holding off playing all day. But anyway, combats were triggered where everybody had their initial combats. The only real effect was Franco ended up taking Zaragoza. But now the Republicans are actually launching an attack in Seville. They have an advantage in cards in terms of total number, and they felt this stack down in Seville was bigger, and they don't want to give up an opportunity to counterattack. Of course, what this means is whatever happens here, the Nationalists will probably trigger this space next. Although they may want to make sure that if they can win these two and they have some possibility of winning this, they may want to hold it for last. So that's not obvious that they will trigger it next, if they're not sure they want to attack, because they are a little weaker. I don't know what's going to happen. The combats are, there's big piles of combats. It's getting more and more desirable to use. Well, it's hard to tell whether or not you want to use cards, is the thing. Because you're almost always giving something good up with the cards, or you're giving up a card you may need in one of these other battles, and maybe it's more important there. And it's really hard to decide. Before, with Madrid as the only thing that was likely to change, to win the game all at once, it seemed pretty obvious. But the Nationalists are going to have to get an automatic victory by turn 10. Or else they have to, yes, they have to get an automatic victory. Because these 3 cities, well, no. It would only be one of those. So wait a minute. So if there's, but if there's only 3 cities that the Republicans are sitting in, if there's only 3 cities that the Republicans are sitting in, which I think, gotta make sure it's worded right, Maybe they need to hold 4 because of the way it's worded. No. 3 cities, if they're sitting in 3 or less cities, and 3 wins them the game, that means the Republicans have at least 9, or the Nationalists have at least 9 cities, and therefore they win the game. So the way the victory conditions are worded seems to leave an option open to the extent that there's no way that the standard victory conditions will take place. One of the automatic victory conditions is going to take place on turn 10. I don't know why the standard victory conditions even exist. But anyway, onward with this battle. What amounted to a Republican victory at Seville, the Nationalist chances are beginning to slip away completely. Now, you have to remember, there were a couple of situations, like the Battle of Madrid, which probably favored the Republicans. In the sense that the Nationalists thought they had another turn. Maybe they could have pushed it on their first turn. I don't think they could have done much more than they did. It was the turn that they won Madrid, turn 4 or whatever, that they had a real chance, and it didn't, but I definitely did not realize that I had to do it on turn 3, which would have been the main effect. The other effect, the idea that both sides had to threw so many forces in there and played so many cards. I don't know how much that hurt the Nationalists, but the devotion to making that attack on turn 4 did hurt them a little bit, in the sense that they committed cards that could have given them the naval edge, and the naval edge has been helping the Republicans since then. So with a Republican victory there, that leaves it on the Nationalists to trigger an attack. And we want to make these 2 battles. If we can wipe out those spaces, that's great. But we used our only card that I felt comfortable spending, whereas the Republicans actually have 3 more cards. They did not use one. They have 3 cards that they're fairly comfortable using up. The Nationalists ended up attacking with every single one of their units, and they actually, the air power ended up losing them one of their big 5-point units entirely, trying to wipe this one communist unit out. As long as that communist unit is there, it means that Lister can use his bonus. Well, this is pretty ridiculous. I was expecting to knock it out so their counterattack wouldn't be as big. But, my attack has cost me more than I think I would have expected from their counterattack. And in fact, the fact that I made them use up their planes means that's not going to be as big a deal. But we are going to go to their counterattack now. And polishing off this 8th turn, let's see. The naval battle forced the Nationalists to withdraw, which gives them the benefit of an extra card. And pulled the generals, etc. off. Played cards. The Republicans only played 1 to get themselves a tank down in Cadiz, and the Nationalists grabbed themselves a couple of units and another boat. And in fact, if they're going to play a boat, I think the Republicans are going to free this. Activate all ships in the Cartagena naval base. Oh, you know, this doesn't actually say they have to control it. That's disturbing to me, though. I mean, maybe there's some way they could get a coup in the city to the extent that they have, but I don't feel like they should be allowed to do that without a presence. So I'm going to hold on to that card and not play it. I don't think they should be allowed to. And it might be in the fact, or it might say that ships are destroyed, scuttled, whatever. Or there might be all new rules in the fact that say they're, you know, sailing out on the other side. Who the hell knows? I don't think there's anything that extreme, but you know, the game has a lot of rough edges in the rulebook. Oh, so that gets us down to the status. We have there's 1 Republican city, Seville, 5 though nationalist, which is kind of interesting because even though, you know, we lost or didn't succeed in the big battles that we wanted, and honestly we lost them. We have 1 unit worth 1 here, we have 3 units worth 1 there. We're in bad shape in terms of those, and but there are units sitting around. Now this is kind of hard to get anywhere. I could get to Barcelona. That are bigger. There's more force for the nationalists. They're just having trouble applying it where they absolutely wanted it. So anyway, that's going to push us to turn 9. I think we may be able to get the, I don't know. Right. All right. And I guess it's time for me to make dinner. Okay. Starting turn 9, the lack of card draws is really beginning to hurt the nationalists. They were down to none. They only got 2. Whereas the Republicans are pulling in 3 per turn. Nobody's in the med, so nobody's getting the bonus draws there, and whatever the treaty or whatever that allows the med to remain open to transit of foreign troops. That didn't get played. That's actually a Republican card, and well, they've got control of the sea for the most part, so they're in a good situation. We fought here again because this takes a card away from the nationalists, or we're going to fight there again. An alternative would be, you know, play with replacement points. That doesn't really do much. And then here to try to get an extra card. But if we did that, the Republicans could leave here and keep control of it. So we've got to fight there. There's not much choice. And now it's time to play around and move. I think the situation is hopeless for the nationalists, but as is my want, we're going to finish the game up, I guess. It's becoming obvious how weak the nationalists actually are. There basically aren't a lot of extra places because most of the locations on the board are already filled by both units, or at least a lot of them are, by both sides. So it's very hard to move units more than one space. You know, so I kind of daisy chain everything around here. But it turns out I just don't have the forces to go threaten Seville at all. So I can't even go for the automatic victory there. The only thing I can hope for is maybe to win enough fights to get this number up to 8. I don't think that's going to happen. But there are some fights that I could win here. Of course, there's risks at places like this. So like if the Republicans say, hey, we can't lose now, so I could sleaze a force, you know, maybe into Zaragoza, but where do I get the extra troops? I could get them out of here, but that only gets me 1 unit into Zaragoza, in that 1 strength unit. Out of here, I could conceivably go into Salamanca or Toledo, because I do have 2 units there. But I might lose Madrid if I don't have enough forces here. So the one place that I kind of have a pile of troops that I don't need all of them is here, but there's not much I can gain from there. I could get to Elmira, Cordoba, or Badajoz, and that's it. So the Republicans shifting over a little bit here to get towards to get into more cities. I didn't choose to go into Salamanca, but I did go to Badajoz, which gives me a little bit more flexibility in the upcoming, on the final turn. The reason I didn't is because it looks to me like we have a tough fight here. I threw a couple of planes in, launching an attack here. I think I threw a plane here. I actually threw a plane over in the med, make sure I get an extra card off that. But otherwise, you know, I'm so limited in terms of where I can advance, and that's going to get us to the generals. And the placement for the attacks, yeah, this was kind of an interesting one, because I got people like Lister here. I could have put him in Valencia for better defense. I put him in Ciudad Real because I have a better chance of succeeding in an attack. Obari, absolutely useless in most places. I didn't put him in a place where an objective city could be at risk, because honestly I just want to keep my objective cities. I don't necessarily want to, this is kind of weird because to some extent maybe I've got the advantage in terms of troops, so I want the chances of the attrition to go against, but I also don't want to give the extra replacement point and lose my own. My goal is a more conservative one here, being of course the communists. So an attack here, you know, I've got a slight, not an advantage, I've got an attritional fight there, but it's not at an enhanced level of risk. What I didn't do was put somebody with a bonus into Barcelona instead of launching an attack on Murcia, which is a little weird. I'm not sure why I chose to do it that way. I did decide to throw Roja into Madrid, in part because I sort of have a movement channel coming through here, and if things go really lucky for me, this and this will both be cleared, and then I've got sort of free access through all of this crap. But yeah, I'd have to get really lucky for that to happen. And that's going to get us to the actual combats. Through all the combats, including the naval combat. The naval combat, one of the Republican ships got damaged, which has kind of somewhat equalized this. This is one ship, one die at +1 versus 2 dice. I think the 2 dice has a slight advantage, especially due to staying power. Plus, that can be split up and go to 2 different places. Of course, there's planes that can screw with it. So, what happened? Well, not a lot for the most part. The Nationalists took Toledo, but the Republicans took Madrid and wiped out one of the larger nationalist forces. They drained the nationalist cards both in Barcelona and Madrid, but at a high cost in their own cards as well. They played one that I think probably was a bit overkill. They probably should have held on to it, but we're getting close to the end here, and these replacement points, you know, may be pretty important. And another thing is, a lot of the cards just don't do shit. This one gives me some replacement points, which is kind of cool. This one opens the fleet, but most of the others don't. This one was kind of interesting, and I wanted to hold on to this. This is going to allow me another battle at the beginning of next turn if I want to launch one. I don't know what the leadership situation with that is. I don't think... How is this worded? During the next turn, the Republican player may move and initiate 1 free battle before the draw phase. So yeah, that doesn't just give me a battle. It allows me to shift my forces. Now, there's facts on these cards. I don't want to even fucking look them up. I think it's a full movement, but I'm not sure. I played off actually all the Republican cards. They reinvigorated their navy, grabbed some more replacement points. I looked this thing up in the FAQ, and it is not at all what it looks like. During the next turn, the Republican player may move and initiate 1 free battle before the draw phase. Basically, their movement ends up first. They lose their normal movement. They don't get a second movement. It's not that powerful. They move all their stuff, Then they get a free battle. Then I guess you have the draw phase. And then the nationalists get their movement. And then the Republicans get nothing. Except maybe general assignment elsewhere. I don't know. But I looked at it and I'm like, shit, man, I don't want to deal with that crap. I'm going to hold on to it just for a combat card. Because I don't see how it's going to help me particularly win the game at this point. It could set things up so that I can cut, you know, the nationalist forces into slices or something. But it's just a horribly, like, the card does not at all represent the depth of information that's in the FAQ at all. It's like, I really question how this game came to be printed. Basically the second edition, which is the English edition, how this fucking happened if the original edition had such ambiguities, you know, where like this card just does not express at all what it does. And it's not the only case in the game where this is a factor. You wonder how this possibly could have, you know, been deemed a developed enough game that it should just be reprinted as is. I am familiar with the idea, and you know, you see this in some of the Games Workshop stuff from the 80s, of, yeah, you know, like Talisman didn't really nail down the rules and made up a lot of shit, left a lot of shit up to like ambiguous statements that, but you could pretty much come up with some reasonable interpretation of this. The reasonable interpretation of this has nothing to do with, at all, with what the rules are for it. It's like, it requires like a page and a half of additional rules, as far as I can see. Like, it gives one specific section on this, where it explains this new sequence, and I'm like, well, that's fucking weird. Let me see if there's anything else about it. Yeah, there's a whole sequence of questions on it in addition to that. It's just, you know, the game's got problems. That's all I have to say. And for the assemblage of the replacement points on both sides, the Republicans having a huge advantage in these. It's, well, not a huge advantage. Actually, in a sense, the nationalists have kind of a bigger advantage because they were able to build 3s into 5s. But being able to slap down tons and tons of 2-point units is really kind of helpful, actually, to the Republicans, because that allows them to sleaze units around a little bit more quickly. You know, so even if the nationalists cover Madrid, there's pieces in here that they can slide out. Of course, they're only adding 1 piece to each space, but still, they're in a much, much stronger position. And it looks absolutely impossible to prevent them, to either, well, to prevent them from having units in 3 objective cities. So then it comes down to, and this is kind of what they were playing for, the nationalists have to win Barcelona, Madrid, and Seville. Can they? I don't think so. They can get these 2 units into Seville. That is about it. Which means the Republicans can, you know, probably get enough forces into Seville to be able to defend it. Although it was empty, so. Madrid. Can they get forces into Madrid? Well, they can get these in. This one's going to be hard to get in. There just aren't a lot of troops lying around here. There are a couple of loose nationalist units there, but one of them is going to have to be used here to try to drive one of those big 5-point units into Barcelona. Was this advance worth anything? I don't know, you know, because I can't push this unit into here because I have to daisy chain it that way. So, yeah, I probably built units I shouldn't have. But on the other hand, we're talking about I had 1 2-point unit that I neglected to play. And I kind of did that on purpose, because if I don't do that, unlike the Republicans, when my units get hit, they turn into these crappy militia. The Republicans turn into crappy militia too, but their militia is no longer crappy. All right. Okay, at this point, we're starting the final turn of the game. I don't think the nationalists have a chance to win, but who knows? I mean, we would have to get rid of a lot of Republicans to knock them out of more than 3 area, to knock them out so that they're not, so that they're in less than 3 OCs, whatever that stands for. I can remember the name, the acronym, but not. Yeah, I'm very tired. I went for a long walk, like 8 hours of walking. And cards probably have no use except for battle. I'm glancing at them. I don't. This one might be of use. The Republicans must change the 1B units, the International Brigade for regular. Yeah, that's not going to help. Yeah, I don't see anything that's going to help. This one, except I might have helped last turn, but if I played it last turn, I would have it available now, but I don't see how it could. So all that's really left that I can see is still the automatic victories. I'm not going to probably be able to cut the Republicans in pieces. So as far as I can see, the only way that I can win as the nationalists is to take Seville, Madrid, and Barcelona, which is what we've been trying to do all game. I have less combat cards available. I have no airplanes comparatively available. I have tanks, but I think those even took, actually I may be out. I may have lost them all in one of these two battles, or in both of those battles. So it looks pretty hopeless. Anyway, I've I can move the navies, but they mean nothing anymore. So I'm just going to say screw it. And I'm going to try to see if I can win the 3 territories. Now, it is possible that someone could win with 7 OCs and someone else wins with with Madrid, Barcelona, and Seville. You think it's not going to happen in this game, but it's possible that you can have 2 people with automatic victory conditions. Again, maybe there's something in the fact. I'm not going to look it up. But I'm going to focus on those 3 cities and hope the Republicans can't take more than 7 cities because of what I'm doing. I think it's almost impossible that I'm going to get them all, though. So, for example, in Seville, I got 2 units that can get down there. Well, the Republicans are going to be able to get at least one of these 2 in there. So, yeah. Shifts. Fair amount of forces into Seville here. Abandoning Toledo, Salamanca. I just don't have the extra forces. I didn't get much into here. I could have put an extra 2-point unit in there, but by putting a 2-point unit into here, I was able to chain over and get a 5er over here, which maybe is my strongest location, but I just don't know. You know, it looks hopeless, and I have no planes to play. So now it's on the Republicans. Republicans also don't have a whole lot of choices. They had, oh, I forgot to play my planes. I gotta do that. But they have some tanks, which they were able to speed over to here because you can leave a space and keep moving with tanks, leave an occupied, a contested space. Well, which is kind of the special thing about tanks, but they're just support units. Not really able to get a lot into any of these, but I had some numerical advantages. I still got to figure out my planes. We'll see. I'll probably throw a few into each. The generals, some interesting things because it's the last turn type situation. Obviously, everybody put their big guys into the 3 big locations. Again, I don't think anybody's going to be able to get up to 8 total cities, which would end it before we get to the end of this, I think. Again, not obviously equal because it's end of upkeep. Oh, this happens at end of upkeep. This happens at end of 10. But it's under the end of upkeep list, so who knows? It might be possible to win for both players to win, and you know, short circuit, and maybe the person who wins the most times automatically wins more. I had some hard calls though. Over here, I had a slight advantage, but the Nationalists put a General Franco in there because hey, if the Republicans fail here and hurt themselves a little, I'll have a chance to take that. I don't think it's enough to win me the game, but you know what? I might as well go for it. There was no chance of like taking Valencia. The chance of taking Zaragoza was lower. Murcia, no chance of taking it. There's 2 Republican units there. I can't get 2 attacks with only 1 unit, so I can't possibly take those. So we got the attacks here and here, just set up because, hey, maybe I'll get a shot at taking them out in one of those. Anyway, I'll start rolling these. No reason to do too much online. Try to use up my cards, if I can remember. Battle of Seville goes, I probably should have played a nationalist card, but it was hard to convince myself, but I got my units wiped out by not doing so. And, you know, I mean, which way did I want to play it? To kill off units or not? You know, positive or negative? I held on to them. It looks to me like the Republicans have already won because they have 2 units. There's only 1 nationalist unit here. That means I'm going to stay in Seville. Unless the nationalists are going to gain 3 cities, and so far they've gained none, and I think lost some. They're just not going to hit that above 7 limit here. And what this means is, if I get my counterattack, I could kill at most 1 unit, no matter what cards, no matter what I play in there. I'm kind of stupid here. I'm trying to optimize, you know, in a situation that cannot be won. I cannot win here. The nationalists are attacking here, which probably isn't even wise. And, you know, now I'm like, do I want to play cards? Sure, I did it. I don't even know what I rolled. I'm going to call it here. It's over. It is over. There is no way that the nationalists can win the game. And I'm just rolling dice for the end of turn to see how things work out. And the way the game works and the way you make your die roll choices and everything, it doesn't really make sense to continue on. Because it's only with a view towards victory that these battles even make sense. You know, I mean, like, oh, can the Republicans wipe the nationalists out here? Well, then why are the nationalists attacking? What do they care? What does one side care other than the other? And I'm getting a little confused by this situation. This ended up being a Republican victory. Why? What happened? Well, there were a couple of places where I made some significant strategic errors. Sometimes, like in the case of the Madrid victory, perhaps there was some influence by not really understanding the rules, the victory conditions properly, whatever, at a particular moment, which certainly skewed things. Did I make any rules errors in favor of the Republicans? Maybe not. I'm not sure. But the nationalists definitely have to try to get an automatic victory earlier in the game. I know what the big mistake was. So the problem with the Madrid thing was that cost me the nationalist navy. Maybe I would have lost it anyway, but I was so focused on trying to win Madrid and succeeding in doing so on turn 4 when it didn't matter anymore that I expended effort there. But some of that same effort was expended by the Republicans in defending it. And I'm not really certain that the Republicans couldn't have thrown their superior air power to counteract whatever the nationalist air power would have been able to do. So I'm not really convinced that that error did all that much. The nationalists had cards they felt more capable of throwing in. I thought the Republicans had lost the game back then, though. You know? So, I mean, the Republicans would have played whatever they could have at that point to play that out. It's just maybe their cards weren't helping or weren't helpful, whereas the nationalist cards were helpful to finishing off, to getting the kill marks on the Republicans. Whatever ended up happening, though, the balance of the naval power definitely allowed the Republicans to have more cards, get more replacement point, you know, more reinforcements, which is the big thing that you get off the cards, more replacement points, which is kind of a minor thing, and put themselves in a position where they really couldn't be rooted out. I don't really feel like playing the rest of this out. I'm just really fucking tired at this point. But yeah, it's I mean, we're at the end of the game, and I could tell back here that there was no chance, and I probably was pretty sure at this point, although there were a few opportunities that the Nationalists could have gotten the three-city victory point thing through the same kind of effort that they got Madrid on turn 4, where both players thought that was absolutely key. One of the issues is that if it's hard to reach a city like Barcelona, you have to really channel your forces through there, and it becomes difficult to win it just because you can only slip a unit a turn into there. But by maintaining a presence and by maintaining power in an area, you have a capability to keep challenging the opponent, even with your just one piece advantage that you can throw in each time. It was kind of funny to see the Republicans win in the South and, kind of lose ground up here instead. But it's definitely possible. All right, let's send this one up, and I'll talk about what I think about the system as a whole, which it's kind of funny. I can give you, a spoiler at this point. There's things that I find really interesting about this system, some of which I'm not absolutely convinced work properly. But the lack of development work on getting the rules nailed down leads me to wonder, hey, was this appropriate level of development work placed onto, say, game balance and stuff like that? And at least right now, I have high suspicions, because if you can't get the fucking rules and the cards nailed down so that they say something that makes any sense, or, that they convey the meaning that the designer intended, well, how did the playtesters possibly get things right? Yeah, they may have been playing all kinds of different rules variants, when, what is it? I don't have it sitting here in close view, but when there's a card that basically doesn't say anything like what the designer spells it out as, or when somebody spells it out as in the fact sheet. I think it's semi-official or whatever. And that, unless things get tweaked a lot and then were never developed for the English version, you're just left with this big question mark hanging over the whole game. Anyway, let me send this up, and I can get to the preview that I'm doing of something else coming up very shortly.